Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, love's in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
My Bigfoot sightings all happened in Oregon. 2015, I moved up to Oregon because my job relocated me. I'm a big outdoors person. I love going backpacking. I love the outdoors. I go probably camping and backpacking maybe once, twice a month. Wintertime, doesn't matter. I'll go snow camping. So about a couple months in from moving up here, I was kind of trying to acclimate to relocating to Oregon, meeting new people, and the work too. Like my work would relocate me getting used to new people at my work. Well, it's kind of stressful, so I decided, you know what? It's been raining for the longest time now, and it's just getting this summertime into June, like right before the summer solstice. The days here are really, really long during the summer solstice. 5 a.m, the sun comes up and goes down like at 10 p.m. And it's just long days. So it was raining a lot, and I decided to go up to Elk Lake. I've been here before years back because my friend lived in Oregon at the time, and I came up and visited with him. And that's when I saw my first footprint in this area that I'm going to. It was really rainy the morning. I took my dog with me, Morgan. He's a pit bull. Gray blue nose pit bull. We head up this dirt road. It's about an hour long. Drove in there. Got to the lake. No one there. There's a campground at the lake. It's a beautiful, pristine lake, alpine lake with conifer trees all around it. Picture perfect. I mean, it is a nice, beautiful place. So I'm like, I'll go there. I'll check it out. When I saw the footprint, I had my friend with me, and I showed him, I'm like, hey, look at this, because we're trying to find a place to camp, because when we were there was a lot of people at the campground. We were just like, we're not going to go in the campground. We did dispersed camping because we had real backpacks, and we've always done that all the time anyway. So we're heading down this trail, and I saw the footprint, I'm like, hey, look at this. This is like, it was about 21 inches pressed into the duff, the pine needles that build up over years and years and years and years. I mean, this pine floor is springy. Like, you cannot put your footprint in it. Just doesn't happen. And I'm looking at this. It looks like something really big human footprint, like 8 inches across, like 21, 22 inches long. I'm just like, hey, look at this, My friend comes over. Yeah. People fake these all the time. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah. I was like, I never really got into Bigfoot or anything before I saw that, so I didn't really think too much of it. And this was a previous experience from years ago. But when I showed up here this day with my dog, it was raining. No one at the lake. And I'm just like, oh, it's pretty, but I wanted to go hike down this trail that goes off the side of it. I think it's like 538, the trail number. Well, I start heading down, and it's beautiful. It goes down like this valley. It cuts along the hillside. Huge old growth trees just growing up, huge bushes with flowers just coming up because it's springtime up there. But it was raining. First thing in the morning. I'm like, oh, this is Oregon. I got to get used to just walking in the rain. So my dog's all wet. We ended up going down this trail, and there's down trees everywhere. I mean, huge ones too. Like, I was crawling under logs, shifting back and forth around them, taking off the trail to go around them with the dog, and lifting my dog up over some trees. I've probably encountered about 15, 20 down trees. And this trail went down 4 miles just downhill. So I got at the lake around 9, 9 a.m. on a Saturday. And I got down to this camp that at the bottom of the trail and where these two rivers meet. And it looked like a campground. Like people would go there, and no one down there, no one up at the lake. I'm just like, well, I got the place to myself, with me and the dog. So I ended up setting up my camp. I'm like, all right, this looks like a beautiful place to be. Two rivers going through crystal clear water, cold, real cold. But these two streams came together right at this campground. And I'm just like, perfect, And me, I'm like soaking wet from the rain. And it's kind of cold. Everything's all wet. I decided, you know what? I'm going to dry off my clothes and then eat some lunch, Well, I had a snack first, and then I started to build a fire. Well, I'm a backpacker, and I've learned over the years, more weight you carry, the more miserable you are. So I don't carry a saw. I don't carry a hatchet if I don't need to. It's just light duty, light, small tent, tiny stove, a pocket rocket stove, and, mat. And that's all I really need, lighter. So I was soaking wet, and then I started gathering wood. And how I'd gather wood is I'd take old branches or whatever I can find that's down and kind of dry. You can't find much dry stuff here coming out of the wet season. So gathered what I could, all about 4-inch length and 5-inch rounds of logs. And how I break them is I'll go up to like 2 trees, and I'll stick the log right in between the 2 trees that are really close together, and then use my body weight and snap off log-sized pieces. And then whatever ones that don't break, I'll take and I'll just whack across a tree, just a really big whack as hard as I can. And most of the time, 2 foot long pieces break off these big chunks of wood, especially the older the wood is. So it's really fast and easy. I don't have to carry an axe or anything. So I think this is my biggest mistake here, right here, because I didn't think anything of this until now, after the fact, and how I came to learn why you shouldn't do that. Now, I started doing that. I got the fire going. Everything was wet, but I had to use my camp stove. It's a little pocket rocket. And I put some twigs because everything was wet. Got the fire going on top of the stove, and then I put it in the fire ring. Got the fire built up, and I took off my clothes down to my skivvies and hung them up over sticks with fire so I can dry them out quick and heat up. And I'm starting to get this weird feeling of being watched. I don't normally get that feeling of being watched. Me and my buddy had a mountain lion stalk us at Kennedy Meadows for like 30 miles in a loop. And every day you would see the mountain lion tracks around our camp, and we climbed up over this hill and I spotted it, but I never got like the sensation of being watched. You only get that from people. So I'm sitting there just like, all right, I'm putting my clothes on. Maybe it's just because I didn't have my clothes on, I was just down in my underwear. And so I put them on. Still, I don't know. I kept on looking around. Kind of felt really weird, just kind of uncomfortable, and I'm just like, okay. So I ended up looking around, taking pictures of flowers and everything else that's in this little area. And I come sit down next to the bank of one of these rivers. And this river comes down from Elk Lake. It joins in with, I believe, Opal Creek. Well, when I sat down, I noticed these little twigs in a little fence structure. And I'm just looking at this. This is a little weird. It looked like old time fences, like not like today's fences, but like old sticks put and weaved together a little bit. But this thing was only like 4 inches long, 3 inches high, and little tiny twigs. It had moss kind of growing on it. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I know when I was a kid, I used to make little mud castles and Indian structures and stuff like that out of mud and sticks. I'm thinking, oh, some little kid probably made this. And I'm looking closely, and then there's on one side of this little fence, there's a little cross with the twigs woven around the top of the cross and back under. And I'm just like, okay, now this is kind of strange. I don't know if it represents or anything, what it represents. And I just found it just quite odd. Picked it up, I looked, and I put down this little stick structure right by it. And then I started feeling real uneasy on this one. So I walk back over the fire, make dinner, and this is about 9:30. Sun's still up here. It's kind of getting to dusk-ish. I clean up. I put my food in my bear can. I always carry a bear can. I keep my food safe. When you're out in the outback, you don't know what's going to come up and take your food, and you don't want to feed animals, and you don't want to lose your food, especially when you're dazed in. I was only 4 hours in, but down a wet, muddy trail, overgrown with leaves and everything else. I was pretty exhausted getting down there. So I'm sitting there, put my dinner away, put all the food away, put the bear can about 30 yards downwind from where I was at, between some logs, and walk back to the fire, sit down. I'm just sitting there for a while. I'm just like, okay, it's getting dark. This is about 9:50. And I get really bad feeling like I can't explain. I just didn't understand. Next thing, dog sitting by my side by the fire. I hear so loud, right directly at me. And this is on one hillside. The dog looks over to it, and it's a hill on the north side of the river that I'm sitting at, where my camp is, my fire is. And it seemed real close because I feel it in my body. I felt the vibrations. I couldn't understand. It was long too. It was and there's nothing that makes that noise. And then simultaneously, right after that roar of the hillside that I walked down, another roar comes from that, just like it. I look back over to behind us, and this is like the south side. It's up the hill, kind of, I don't know, 60, 50, 40 yards, where it was so loud. I felt the vibrations of that too. Dog starts kind of trembling a little bit. The other river that comes up from Twin Lakes up the way, I hear another roar. That was the longest one. And it went from a I couldn't believe how loud these are. A man's not going to make this noise as long, as loud. I don't care. This guy can be an Olympic swimmer and have the breath and lungs capacity of everything. He can't reproduce that sound. It has to be something of a elk moose size. But I know what elk and moose and everything else sounds like. I've traveled other places, and foxes, mountain lions, you name it. Like, this was not the sound. Well, I've had people tell me, oh, you're imagining things. No, not this calls, not the feeling I was getting. I'm sitting there, the dog's shaking. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like thinking to myself, all right, sun's going down. I can't believe what's happening right now. My dog's just shaking, snuggles up with me, and he lays down by the fire, right between my legs, because I'm by the fire too, and he just shaking and wasn't barking. This dog's a yapper. I mean, he'll bark at every animal, any person walking by. It doesn't matter. He just barks. He didn't bark on this one. He got scared and laid down in between my legs. And I'm just like, all right, this is not good. I don't know what this is. I decided I'm not going to walk out. I'm too tired. I'm starting to feel super duper tired. I wanted to lay down. The dog's laying down. I'm like, all right, I'm just going to go in the tent. I take all the wood I had that I gathered up and piled it up on the fire. The sun's over the mountain. There's still kind of ambient glow, and I lay in the tent and I passed right. Dog's with me. I brought the dog in. He's out. I'm out. Next thing I know, I just woke up. My eyes opened up. It was dark. I didn't see the glow of the fire. The fire burnt out. So I'm guessing I didn't look at the clock. Well, as soon as I wake up, about a second later, maybe 2 seconds of coming to, I hear thump. Something just coming down real hard on the ground. I mean, I felt the vibration, something of the stature of I don't know, 700, 800 pound. If you felt like cows running by or something like that, you'd know, or an elk. I've had elk, you can feel them when they jump and they will go through camp, or not through camp. I haven't had an elk come through camp, but something massive. I kind of close my eyes. I'm struggling to keep them open, and I'm not hearing anything. And I'm sitting there. I look down at the dog, and I'm like, well, usually he's a yapper. And I've heard this. It was a big vibration. I was scared a little bit, but I'm an adrenaline junkie. Like, I'll ride a street bike, high performance street bike, a Honda CBR 600 F-Ride, put 75,000 miles on it. I mean, adrenaline to me is perfectly normal. I don't get tired after this, after high adrenaline thing. I know what it is. And I've heard people say, oh, adrenaline dump and go to sleep. No, something felt off. Something felt weird the whole time. And then I got extremely tired, and I couldn't even move. Dog's not moving. I'm just like, all right, I'm trying to get up, close my eyes again, and just boom, out again. I don't know why I couldn't stay up. I was frightened a little bit, but I could not stay up. And after just feeling this thing just hitting the camp, well, I'm just kind of going back to this and how frightening it was. I'm getting a little choked up on it. Sorry. But anyways, I wake up. I don't know. Again, I'm hearing something rustling or something. I look up. My tent is all pressed down, real low. It was a little 1.5 man tent you put up with a trekking pole, and it kind of ties down to one end, and at another end it was like a little pop-up tent, cheap, but really lightweight. Didn't have poles. Just use your hiking pole. I tie this thing up tight. The tent was hanging down on my feet. I'm just like, all right. I climbed out. Dog's still asleep. Still dark out. And I'm hearing something off to the river. I think these things like to come down at you at rivers, because when you have rapids, because where this river was, it had stone rapids, and you can hear it, and you just get that river sound coming through, and that covers up mostly everything. If you ever down by a river, you'll understand. The river drowns out all the noises for most part. And I'm hearing mostly just the river. When I get out of the tent and it's dark, I had my headlamp on. I had it, put it off to my side before I got in the tent with me, and I tighten up my tent again, and I'm like, well, okay, that's weird. I'm looking around, I'm real nervous, and I see something, just a dark mass shadow running, and I hear it, and I'm looking over, and whatever it was, terrifying, but I didn't get a good look at it, but I know it was about 8 to 10 feet tall. It was off about 20, 30 yards, and then just shot behind a tree, and I couldn't see it from there. There was no moon that night. It was pretty dark, and I didn't see any eyes shine or anything. And I'm just like, all right. I just tightened up the tent, got back in it, laid down. I'm just so tired. I don't know. I just felt my whole body just so drained, like I've never had it before. And I lay down, wake up when the sun comes up. It was probably around 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. Sun's up early. It's summer solstice right before, a couple days before. It was June 18th, 2015 or 2016 when this happened. I get up. I had to go to the bathroom. I felt like there was no sounds other than the river, no birds, no nothing. And I'm like, that's kind of odd. Usually you can hear squirrels chirping and birds chirping too. And I'm like, something's not right here. So I go and I pee. And as soon as I start peeing, I just felt this, I'm getting stared at big time right behind me. I look back. I can't see whatever looking at me, but I know something's looking at me. And my hair's raising up on the back of my head. I've gone out camping by myself many times, backpacking deep woods, never felt this way. I'm like, all right, I'm out of here. I'm hiking back up to my Jeep. I'm getting out of there. Dog's waking up. He's kind of looking back at the area where I'm feeling like I'm getting watched. So I pack up my tent, my sleeping bag. I try to get everything together. Nothing touched my bear can. My bear can looked like it was not moved, not touched. If this is a bear around camp, black bear, it's not 8 to 10 feet tall. Just the shadow of it was pretty crazy. But that's all I can remember in my head. And I'm just getting this staring feeling, get everything together, get my pack on, start hiking up the trail. It's a 4-mile trip, and I'm getting the dog. The dog had his own backpack and carried his own dog food on him and his foldable collapsible bowls. And it's kind of like a harness thing. And he's not barking. And I'm just like, and he's ready to go. He's just like, okay, let's go. And he was pointing back to where the vehicle was. There's another trail that leads off to Twin Lakes and another trail off to like Opal Creek. And he didn't want to go those ways, especially not the way to Opal Creek, because that was where the area like I'm feeling like getting scared at. He wanted to go the opposite direction back to the vehicle. And I'm just like, I'm in agreement with you. Let's go. So he's hightailing up the hill. He's on a leash with me, so he's pulling me up. I never leave the dog off leash when I'm backpacking in the backcountry because this dog sees a deer or sees an elk or bear, coyote, fox, whatever. You don't want them to run off and get hurt. And I've seen too many people hiking out there with their dogs off leash, and it always ends up in bad because the dogs end up getting fights when I've come across people. But I have them on a leash, so it makes it really slower going up the trail and going over, all these down trees. And I get up to the top, and it's not a bad hike. But as I'm walking up the hill and I'm lifting up the dog over some of these trees, I'm hearing, if I make a step, I hear something off to the side too, up the hill from me. And I hear, make a step, I kind of hear something like a echo-ish. I don't know. Kind of seemed like an echo or not, but totally feeling it like huge anxiety and coming up this hill. And the further I get up, closer to I get to Elk Lake where my vehicle is, I'm feeling less and less like anxiety, like I don't belong here. I got to get out of here kind of feel. But as farther I got away from down this little shelter camp I was at, I was hearing something backing off further. As like it was kind of like taking a step when I was taking a step. I was kind of tripping as to, is that my echo or is that something else? But as I got to my vehicle, the feeling went away. And I got there, I'm like, all right, get into my Jeep, drove back home, told my girlfriend at the time what happened. And she's like, hey, you're nuts. You're nuts. I was like, maybe, I don't know. Kind of hallucinating on that. Was I? I don't know. That was just the most bizarre experience I've ever had. So I go to work on Monday and I tell some of the coworkers what happens. Oh, yeah, you don't know you're hearing, So kind of kept it to myself for a while. But I'm going to go back here. That was my first real, very frightening experience there. Didn't get a good look at it or nothing. My buddy lived in Oregon for a while. He did law school. And so I came up to visit because I was living in California and San Diego. Came up to see my hiking buddy, and he showed me this Elk Lake area. I was talking about at the beginning of this, seeing that footprint, We stayed a night right by that footprint where we camped. And then next day we hiked back to the Elk Lake, and we went up this other trail up the hill, Battle Axe Mountain. And we were going to go to Twin Lakes with the trail the other way. We get halfway, we decided to stop. It was a pretty area, one trail. And it's like where a glacier kind of melted. There's like a little bit of water there that we can filter and get water from. And we set up camp, and I end up relaxing. My friend goes into the tent. We had nothing to do. I'm just like, all right, let's take a day, just rest, after setting up, and we'll go down the Elk or the Twin Lakes next day. And so it was probably 4 or 5 in the afternoon. The mosquitoes are huge. They're flying around. I'm sitting there with the mosquito net over me, my back against a tree, and just soaking in nature. There's like a shell cliff where our shale rocks and coming down, like where just erosion happens from snow melt off and everything else. And overgrown blackberry bushes, and I'm looking at, and then old growth forest, ferns, no breeze, just a complete calm day. There's these little pine cones that grow on, I think, hemlock trees. They're really small pine cones. And this is kind of, same area as my first experience. It's probably about 6 miles away from there, up on a ridge. And then I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden seeing like little pine cones drop. I'm like, are they falling out of the tree? It didn't dawn on me at this time. This is before my big experience, and I'm sitting there, I look up in the tree, and like, there ain't no wind. And then I kind of just sit and glance off out into the distance, because I had a kind of a view off of this hillside we're on Battle Axe Mountain. A couple more of these little pine cones come, one hits me. They're real small things. I don't know. Like, you can't just throw these things. They ain't going to go far. And I'm like looking, okay, so I start looking up, seeing if I see them falling from the tree, and something just comes off from the side, and just was like, no, that's strange, I seeing the footprint and that, I'm like, all right, I never really was into Bigfoot or knowing about it very much. I mean, yeah, I've seen a couple episodes of Finding Bigfoot. So I'm just getting these pine cones and picking it up, putting it in my hand. And there's about 6 or 7 of them. I'm looking, and that's pretty much it on that. Me and my buddy are there. He got back up. We're talking, just catching up on old times and going over life stories, and nothing exciting happened on that. Well, back into the past. Well, my dad got me into camping, and then Silver Patrol got me into like search and rescue. I used to like learn maps and stuff like this and everything else. So he got me into the outdoors. It got me into the other things. And as I got older, I moved away. I didn't see him for a while, and then did my own life. And well, unfortunately, he had some health problems and had a stroke and lost part of his eyesight. So I was in a good spot in my living, so I ended up taking care of him for the most part. And I moved him from Arizona to Oregon with me, and had him living down the street. And so he loved doing backpacking. He used to backpack before I was even born. And he's like, oh, Oregon's such an awesome place. I mean, I don't ski very much, but I miss going camping and everything else. I'm just like, well, you know what? Let's do it like the old days. And I took him out camping in Sasquatch National Forest. And it's not too far from where I'm living. It's about an hour drive. I knew the spot. I drove by. It's like a hunting spot, or not even a hunting spot. What it is a pull out for logging equipment, or it's like the top. So logging happens, they go up on a hill, and then they set up booms going down with wire that pulls the tree stumps back up after they cut it and load it up on trucks, and they get it out of the forest. Well, this is an old little shoot off for that logging operation, and firing in there. It's off the road quite a bit. Forest Route 14, it was like the northern part of Sasquatch National Forest. And it's an offshoot. I can't remember the offshoot of it. Well, we had everything set up. We didn't set up a tent. We had some cots. I had one of those easy up 10 by 10s set up, and I got the fire going, and I tarped off like 3 sides of the walls of this easy up. We're just having a good time and talking about old past. And well, I was cooking some food, and all of a sudden my dad goes, "Do you hear that?" I'm like, huh? Well, my dad being partially blind for a while, he kind of got more tuned in with sounds and hearing things. Like, I didn't quite hear it. So sitting there for a little bit, and then he's like, "Yeah, it sounds like there's some people over there." This sound like talking real deep. I'm listening. I'm like, yeah, actually, I hear it sound like whoa, 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 whoa. Something muttered, muffled. But there's two ways in on the Highway 4, Forest Drop 14, and it's a gravel dirt road. You can hear anything. And this is a road that's traveled not too much. We only had like one person drive by later after the next day, but I'm hearing it, what the heck is that? It's real loud. I didn't get the sensation of being stared at or anything. So I just continued what I'm doing. Later on in the day, it was a beautiful sunny day, and I gathered up some more wood, head back to camp. My dad was sitting there, and he was like, yeah, no. And I already had this experience, though, up by that shelter camp by Elk Lake. So I already kind of went through what I did. Once I started hearing that, I started telling my dad about Elk Lake and what happened to me there. And he's like, oh, there's no such thing as Sasquatch. There ain't nothing Bigfoot. That's just, when I was in Boy Scouts, I was camping, we had this moose and it mooed so loud and freaked me out. And I'm like, you were not there, Dad. He's like, yeah, you probably just hallucinating. So he didn't even believe me. I'm just glad I'm alive after the roars I've had. But real cautious when I'm out there now. It's totally different when I'm out there because I kind of know what's out there and what can happen. I'm glad I walked away alive. Anyways, we're camping. The next day I hear that magical whisper, some people would say, like voices in the forest. Well, nothing happened after that. We leave. I go back to that spot like a couple months later. I've actually went there quite a few times. I've heard that voice again a few times after that. I can never figure it out. So I'd start hiking down this trail that kind of goes down the canyon where it's coming from. It's all overgrown forest road. You're getting under trees, over trees. I had my dog with me and my gun. Carry a gun now, a big one, and I don't go without it. But heading down the trail, it's just getting so overgrown. Stickers from blackberry bushes, marionberry bushes. It's thick. Thick. I'm coming across deer scat and elk scat, and I'm like, all right, this is as far as I can get. And I'm getting that feeling again, like going down this trail, like my gut feeling saying, turn around now, turn around now. Turn around, I head back up, back to the campsite, and I'm hearing the voices are a lot louder. Nightfall comes at the camp. There again, I hear, thump. I think these things climb up in trees because I don't know what it is, but it sounds like they're up in trees and they jump down or jump around. Stand there, it's dark, see the campfire light around the area, the glow of that, and I'm looking around. I heard some footsteps. And then it stops. And I'm looking at the direction is kind of the inlet of where the dirt road goes to this logging landing. I'm just staring over there. There is a big black shadow again. Fire flickered a little bit, and I kind of saw like a reddish eye shine coming back at me. So now I'm getting freaked out. I was car camping, so I'm packing up all my things, thrown in the back of my truck. I had a truck and a Jeep. Thank God I had a camper shell because I just took everything, piled in. I was out of there with the dog. Within, 5 minutes, I had my water dumped in on the fire and had my hand on the gun. I'm like, not again. This ain't happening. Not again. Not again. Not again. Not again. Not again. I don't know how, these things keep on coming after me, or I don't know what it is, or if I'm just like a magnet or something to it. I didn't camp for a long while. I didn't go out in the woods for maybe 2 years or so. It's kind of just done after that. But I don't know. Something just kind of itched. I kind of forgot about it. I didn't really think about it. But this time I was alone. I didn't have my dad, and I didn't tell anyone. My girlfriend I had at the time, she'd never wanted to go camping anyway. So it was just me out there alone. I'm like, you know what? Okay, I'm just not going to do it. And I had life changes and new girlfriend and then just kind of forgot about it. And then she loved the idea of the outdoors and going out. So I'm like, okay, yeah, well, I'll take you. I took her to that same spot where I had the counter I just spoke about, Sayusla, or a place I took my dad. And I went there again. No activity, no nothing. I didn't hear anything. I'm just like, okay, but I was real nervous. But there was a bunch of hunters in the area. So I kind of felt like, okay, like there's people out here. I think it was the start of deer season. I'm like, okay, bunch of hunters. I'm good. So nothing happened. I'm like, okay, good. Maybe this is all in my head I had before. I don't know. It was a rough time moving up to Oregon. Is it in my head? Like, am I going crazy? I don't know. No, I'm not. So pandemic ran around and, fast forward later and lost my father. He passed away, but my girlfriend was real supportive. She's still with me now. We decided, you know what? You need to kind of get out, whatever, do things, So it was 2021, kind of like near the end of the major lockdowns. And I believe it was Memorial Day weekend. I decided, you know what? I'm going to go face my fears. I'm going to take her up to this Elk Lake and we're going to hike down that trail. And we're going to go camp down in the area where I had my experience of getting roared at. I didn't tell her. I think it was kind of mean of me. I'm just like, if it happens again, is it in my head or is someone else going to see this? My friend, he saw the footprint there, but he didn't believe it. He's like, oh, that's probably a fake. And then nothing happened other than I getting pine cones thrown at me while he was in the tent. No vocals. I didn't see anything. Didn't feel anything. But I take my girlfriend down to the spot and, oh my God, I can't believe how many people were down there. We crossed about 10 people. I'm like, this is pandemic. Like, I guess everyone's out quarantining out in nature. I came across, I don't know, 20 people. The whole campground that I was at was like a 4-mile hike in, and there's still down trees and a bunch of people down there. And I'm just like, okay, well, I feel a lot safer, but the whole campground's piled up. So I'm just like, you know what, babe, let's just kind of go up the way. And I had a new dog. It's Anatolian Shepherd, a huge white dog. I'm like, yeah, I'm getting a big, huge shepherd, wolf-sized dog to have with me, especially going out to these areas I go with. If I'm going to go out, I'm going to have that too. He's going to let me know, So we're trying to hike. We went past. I'm like, let's try to hike up to Twin Lakes. That's the backside of Elk Lake, where that shelter camp was and where everyone's piled up. It was a beautiful weekend. Picture perfect weather. Well, the trail to Twin Lakes from that direction kind of washed out from nowhere. My dog, he's a big dog, and he had a pack on too, but he said, okay, I'm done. I'm not hiking no more. I'm sitting down right here. I'm like, oh, come on, Jax, let's go. And he's like, nope, I'm a big dog. I'm 140 pounds. Are you going to carry me? And I was just like, okay. So the dog's done. I'm like, all right. I'm looking around. There's the water. One of the rivers that from Twin Lakes, they're coming down from where I had my really frightening encounter. You could see it. I'm up on a ledge and it's real mossy, flat, soft. You can't see it from the trail. And I'm like, all right. And I'll tell my girlfriend, well, this is where I camp. It was a lot drier. If you light a fire, you can start a huge forest fire during like the dry part of the month. It was a dry year. So just relaxing, hanging out. And it was a 3-day weekend for me. So it was the first day, Saturday. And the dog was like, okay, I'm done. So I set up camp. We had dinner. And then woke up the next day. We decided, we'll just stay here the whole day too. I got my earphones out and I had my phone with me and it had like a radio app. Turn on the radio app. We'll see a couple people walking by from the distance. You can hear them. got my earphones out, but I get a radio signal. We were getting this weird station. It was something, listening to that. And we got bored with that. And we went down to the river, started pumping river water for filters to get more water. Started getting this tingling feeling in my ears, like a ringing feeling. Well, let me back up. This is the second day I'm talking about going to the river. Well, the first night, the dog starts barking. It was dark, opposite direction to where all the people are at. I don't know if it was just the echo. It was just barking at an echo coming off from all the other campers, but we're across the river and quarter-mile away from the campground where I had my experience out and dispersed. And I'm like, okay, no better place to go my fear than here. The dog starts barking, kind of puts me in high alert that the first night. I'm like, okay, but now back to the river and my ears are ringing. What the heck? So hawk back up to camp. I'm like, hey, babe, I'm getting this huge headache coming on. I mean, incapacitating headache. I felt like I was zapped. What are you doing back here? Zapped. Didn't we tell you to go off before? That's where I get the feeling from what happened. It could be all in my head. I mean, I had caffeine. I mean, it wasn't that, I was drinking tea. So I just get this serious migraine headache and incapacitated me from about 1 p.m. to the next day. And I woke up the next day, still kind of like my head just pounding. And I'm like, we're going home. A lot of people were down there and we're walking up. The girlfriend slips and falls on where this little creek comes through the river, sends a spike from a rotting, decayed wood structure that used to be part of the trail, but eroded away. And she fell down and hit her butt real hard, had a huge bruise on her butt for the longest time from this spike that she landed on. Luckily, she didn't get seriously hurt and she was able to walk out of there. Yeah, I don't go there anymore. And plus, you can't. After the big fires here in Oregon, actually, the Forest Service has that whole lake closed down. You can't get to it. Elk Lake didn't burn, but all the area around it did. And so they got it closed off. No one goes up there until they clear out the roads or whatever. Fast forward November, I decided to take her to Snow Park with their son. And we went camping, snow camping. I have a titanium foldable stove and hot tent where you can put the stove inside the tent with the silicone fiberglass kind of round cutout where it doesn't burn the tent, just keeps the tent cloth from burning against the stove pipe. It keeps the tent real nice and warm. Had cots, I compacted the snow with snowshoes and set up everything, and 0-degree bags. And this is where it gets real nutty here because it was nighttime and it gets dark real early, like 5. I cooked turkey dinner, had a turkey leg. I cooked it on a pan on top of my little stove in the tent. And it's just a wood burning stove, I brought a saw, a hand saw, and an axe, and cut a dead standing tree, processed a bunch of wood for it, that way it could stay warm. At one point in the night, I was literally sweating, taking off my jacket inside the tent. And it's 26 degrees outside the tent and like 70 in the tent, 75. I was like, all right, it's getting warm, We're all conking out after turkey dinner, camping. Well, it starts to get cold. I wake up because the fire's going down inside the tent stove. Put some more wood and it's choking up. Starting to get a bunch of smoke inside the tent. I'm like, oh, this ain't good. Open up the door, let some smoke out. And I had to go and so I'm crunching around the tent with my snowshoes and start poking the top of the chimney of the smoke pipe. It clogged up a little bit at the top. I'm working, getting the mesh screen cleaned out. Freed up and get all the little charcoal out. I check my phone. It's 3 a.m. I'm freezing. I'm starting to shake. I'm like, okay, it's cold. I had the tent kind of sealed up so it doesn't get so cold in there. And there it happens. I hear the exact same 3 roars. Thank God this time it was not surrounding me and my family. I hear it maybe a mile down the road, but it's the exact same roars. Same. I'm like, are these things like know where I'm at? Like, why would this happen when I wake up, when the fire chokes out and I come out and I'm up? What is this? What is this? I still don't understand. Like, why is this happening to me? They didn't do anything last time or the time before. So I'm in the snow. I'll hear them crunching up, or I'll hear snow falling out of the tree if they're coming through in trees or whatnot. So I felt relatively safe. I had my gun with me. Nothing I could do about it. I didn't tell my girlfriend right away in the morning. I kind of waited. I'm like, at this time, I told my girlfriend a little bit about going down to that one area in Elk Lake. Like, after she went, I kind of confessed to what experiences I've had out there. So I told my girlfriend what I heard last night, and she's like, "Yeah, you're tripping. You're out of your mind." So I'm like, all right, yeah, maybe I am. Am I hearing? I'm waking up and hearing things. So the camping trip went good. I mean, nothing more to say. We spent some more time there making s'mores over the tent stove, and we had a good time. Packed up. It was cold and wet. Her son was crying a little bit, playing in the snow. Got a little too much snow time, and it bring smiles to the face. He liked it, and it's like that type B fun. You don't like it when it's happening, but you liked it afterwards. He loved it. So we headed home after Thanksgiving weekend. It was like a 4-day weekend for me. And I got tired and burnt out just doing most of the work camping. Well, I really like snow camping. I figure if I'm going out in the snow, I'll hear these things coming up, or they're not going to be wanting to be in the snow. It's cold. They're barefooted. They're cold, right? That's not always the case. I heard these roars about maybe a mile down the way. So obviously they're in the snow. Well, a month later, I decided to go again. It was New Year's. I get my little New Year's vacation. I had like a 3-day New Year's on that weekend. And so I'm like, hey, let's go back up to the snow. She was like, okay, yeah. So we drove all the way up to, it's called Big Spring Snow Park. That's where I had the camping trip that I took on Thanksgiving with her in the snow trip. And where I heard the same 3 roars a mile down the road, I was probably closer to the Santiam River along Highway 20 in Oregon. And this is probably a good 30 miles from Elk Lake-ish area. So whatever it is, 30-mile range, or there's more than one out here, maybe, I don't know. But these ones sound the exact same roars at that night in snow camping. So I'm pretty sure it's the same individual Sasquatch that visited me that one night. That kind of freaked me out a little bit. I'm like, all right, this is the New Year's. I'm going to go camping with my girlfriend again. We brought some alcohol this time. And we're like, all right, New Year's, you're going to have some fun. Everyone's, But it was pouring rain when we get up to the snow. Just rain and snow-covered ground. My girlfriend's like, I am not getting wet in this cold temperature. I'm like, yeah, you're right. That's not worth it. That's asking for like hypothermia. We're not doing that. So turn around. It was already late in the day when we got up there because it was quite a drive from my house. And plus driving the snow and the bad weather. And so you get to drive slow. And it was late. And I'm like, all right, we're going back. Too late. Missed it. I'm driving down the road. I decided, you know what? We got out of the snow line heading down, not quite towards Detroit Lake where you turn off to go up to Elk Lake, but it's called Minto Road, and there's like a rock quarry there. No snow there. I pulled in, drove up, and decided to make camp. Found the rock quarry, and we're driving around on the perimeter and found a little campsite. We're in a truck, and when we first got there, it was late, and I ended up kind of shifting stuff over in the back of my truck and set up the cots in the back of the truck that night, and we just both conked out. It was wet. And the next day we woke up and I was like, all right, this campsite's great. I set up my teepee tent with the tent stove. No snow, but it was just raining. So I put a tarp up over and it starts pouring rain that night. And me and my girlfriend, we had music going because we brought a little boombox and having a good camping trip, and drinking. And she gets a little tipsy on New Year's night. And, I can't remember what day of New Year's on 2022 it was, but she ends up losing her cookies and she wasn't feeling well, but she was pretty tipsy. And I hear that thump again. Boom. You get this feeling when they're around. I mean, I heard the roar, but I didn't really feel them around. But when I was at the Sasquatch campsite and they're around, you feel them. When I was at Elk Lake, you feel them. You get this dread feeling coming through your body and your hair stands up. You just know they're there. I was drunk, but I started to get that feeling. And then I heard that thump sound. I'm like, babe, did you hear that? She's like, huh? And she's like feeling sick. I'm just like, okay. Well, anyways, we ended up staying up at midnight and you couldn't hear much because the rain was pouring down so much. I had to go out there and adjust the tarp over the tent to get it right so I don't knock the chimney and burn down the tent on the tent stove. And I'm like, well, if you didn't hear anything, maybe it's in my head. So just going, wondering, but had that kind of tense feeling a little bit. I ended up going to sleep after midnight and passed out. Woke up with a little bit of a hangover the next morning. We started getting out and looking around, kind of exploring around, breathing the fresh air. It's pretty in this campsite. Like these ferns were growing like, they were not like the normal ferns. I don't know what kind of plant species they were, but they're kind of a thinner, squirrely kind of looking. And it just real old growth kind of look, but the rock quarry off to one side and then tucked away is this little camp spot. So I'm walking in between the border of the rock quarry and where the forest starts, where the camp is, about 25 feet away. I see like this little juvenile footprint. I mean, it's not like human. It's kind of coned off at the heel. It was only about maybe 6 inches long, kind of raccoonish, but not. But it wasn't because it was too wide. My girlfriend took a photo of it, but it looked like it was running straight for the tent, and it looked like it had some force in it. And I'm thinking, whatever this thing was, it was running up really quietly, and it jumped because there's kind of a bush and tree, and this thing had some speed, and it was fresh from the rain and the mud from the night before. And I think what it was juvenile, and it came and hopped over. I think they tried to avoid being seen or heard making footprints. When it was trailing me out, it kind of matched my steps. When I'm in the tent, it hops, so it doesn't make footsteps. I think these things are real curious, and I think they have like infrasound or some kind of power like that just zaps you. Whatever makes you go to sleep if they wanted to at their whim. Well, yeah, I showed her that print and we ended up leaving. She didn't feel comfortable there. And she's like, let's go. I want to go back home. It was raining. It's not pleasant here. Let's go. And that happened. I kind of still go camping here and there. I do. Every time I go out there now, I say, please, God, protect me, protect who I'm with. Don't let anything bad happen. And every time I pray, so far I haven't had an experience like that. But I did go one time before that. And then my family went down for a hike in that Sasquatch campsite. I'm kind of leery about there too, with the magic voices and what I saw on my left. But I figured, hey, maybe that's just one time deal. I didn't pray that time. And then they went for a hike on their own, all the girls and her young boy. And they went down the trail that I kind of like hiked down, but it tees off one direction, the other one. One way was the way I went down the first time when I hiked down there, trying to look for the voices or if someone's camping down this area, they have like some kind of camp. And I got that weird feeling, turned around, and I think it just followed me back there, back to camp that one time. But so they went and they hiked down and they came back And then the next day they're like, oh, let's show you where we went, and it was kind of where I kind of hiked down, but they turned off the trail, and on the way down, huge elk just come tromping through the forest. Doo-doo, 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 doo-doo. It was massive. The whole family was like, oh yeah, like, wow. I thought that was pretty cool. So we ended up going to the end of the road. This is the way we went up. And I'm like, okay. And I'm looking down at this trail, and right where the bushes where we stopped about right here. This road kind of goes really overgrown. So we decided not to go down. And let's go down there. So I'm coming up. I'm leading everyone else there, and I come and I see these footprints come running up, sliding to a stop, and then turning around. And I'm like, these are fresh. These happened just like recently. And did you guys hear anything? Like, no, but I don't know if whatever was chasing that elk made those and stopped and realized that we're there coming down the trail. And that's why that elk is booking away. Cause it hopped right in front of us. Usually it didn't run back away from us. It cut across, like heading kind of towards us with this elk. And that's where I saw these footprints. I don't know if it's chasing it or if it came up and saw them and stopped and turned around and tried to hide really quick. But there's no mistaking. These were barefooted. They tore up the moss that's growing over the old gravel logging road that's not used by any kind of vehicles. There's a berm where you can't drive up there. That's my Bigfoot encounter in Oregon. And it feels like these things know where I'm at. It doesn't matter where I go. They know where I'm at. And that's it.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown, no horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the 5-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. The sound of a memory brings me back to the bluegrass playing on my dad's 8-track. It's Pickham and it been through it, getting through the day on Scruggs and Skags, booking A bales to those Tennessee jams. There's no other way that I do it. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Somebody calling backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the drumming on Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Pace of the city life drives me wild. The only tune is the cars rushing by, with the bass on the stereos booming. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah. Somebody going backwards in double time, getting to the soul and the drumming on Kentucky style. Those are the anthems strumming out, country boy living. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. mama's best sweet tea. Got the sound